So for people that are listening that are involved in martial arts in some capacity or wrestling, what should they look to Olympic weightlifting for? And what's that in time investment or interest like to really get something out of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Olympic weightlifting has some benefit for essentially any ground-based sport, right? In any time you were in a sport that having powerful legs and hips and trunk and grip even is valuable, Olympic lifts are going to contribute to some extent. The trick lies in finding the balance between time and energy investment and how that impacts the resources, the very limited resources you have to train for your primary sport, the potential injury risk, or even not even injury so much as overuse, things like tendonitis and things like that you could potentially run into by adding this kind of stuff on top of your primary sport. But I think that it can be simplified and reduced in a way that pretty much anybody can figure out how to implement it to some degree. So even if that means literally doing nothing but power cleans once a week, that is going to give
Right.
you some kind of benefit, for jits, for wrestling, for boxing, anything. Um, and it is, some people are the type of athletes who pick up those skills very quickly, in which case, no brainer, figure out how to do some power cleans, maybe some power jerks or push presses, snatching. Maybe if you think it's fun. I don't know that that's really probably the best use of time and energy for these athletes. And then for someone who maybe they've got bad wrists or bad elbows, or they have to be really careful about a shoulder or whatever, maybe you're not power cleaning. Maybe you're just doing some pulls, or maybe you're doing, a jumping back squat with relatively light weight, like 20% of your back squat or something like that, where you're training power like you would get from an Olympic lift, but in a really simplified way where the risk is very low and the learning curve is very flat, right? Um,
Right.
and I think even but it's the same as any sport, right? You can simplify the most complex things as much as needed to introduce them, and it just depends on, again, how complex do they need to get for you to benefit from them, versus how can you get the most benefit from the least amount of investment outside of your sport. um
Right.
like so I just
Meaning that like if you're let's say you're a basketball player, you need to be playing basketball. That's what you
yeah,
really at the end of the day need
yeah,
to be doing is taking shots, feeling defensive patterns, making runs, and getting the damn ball in the hoop. And people might
absolutely.
like to overcomplicate this all to be like, no, you need depth drop, reactive, single leg plyometrics, or you're going to have a non-contact injury. It's like, look, at the end of the day, you got to play the damn sport. If you're
Yeah.
only selecting from exercises, then you're never actually rolling, or you're never actually throwing a combo, or sprawling, or stuffing a takedown. Like, then where's the actual value? And that's actually confusing your efforts.
Well, and one of the really earliest important lessons I got in BJJ was to stop trying to power my way through everything, right? And
You
and
seem like you
so,
would be good at that.
well, you have to be when
Yeah,
you're not skilled, right?
yeah,
When
right, right. No,
you're
I,
you're just like the
yeah,
big clod hopper who comes in there and is like, well, I'm
yeah,
just stronger than him, and it's like that can get you to a certain extent, but with a truly skilled guy, at rolling,
yeah.
he's still going to tee off on you, and all you're going to do is be really out of breath and tired while he's just giggling at you and you're tapping out. Um, but so in the same sense is going back to that basketball, jits, boxing, whatever, if your sport and the skills directly related to that sport is not the overwhelming majority of your focus and your time and energy investment, it's going to change the way you play, right? So you take a
Right.
jits guy, especially like a beginner intermediate, you overly focus on strength training or Olympic lifting, he's more than likely, or she more than likely, is going to tend to revert to relying on those abilities over the skill when they get into a bind,
Yeah,
versus
that's a really good point.
the opposite, right? Is when you have that skill base, and you know better than me, when you have these skills and you know how to, your reaction to someone else's offense is second nature. This guy's
Yeah.
about to, Kimura me. I know exactly what to do. You're not necessarily consciously thinking your way through these defenses or reversals or whatever. You're allowing them to happen because you've trained those skills and those situations so much, versus like, oh God, he's about to, wrap me up. I'm just going to get stiff as a board and fight it with all my physical strength. You just can't do it that way. And I think that that's going to lend itself to becoming more natural.